Jackie, if you could call the roll, please.
They never. They're one another's best friends.
I can go ahead. You asked what to be. I can call the roll and they can.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started here.
Is there any?
Scott Paris.
I heard. Thank you. Scott, Jackie's calling the roll.
I'll come back. Jeff Morris,
Here.
Cheryl Munson,
Here.
Edward Ullman,
Here, we want to do it.
Dee Owens,
Here.
Jerry Pittsburgh,
Here.
Julie Thomas. Here. Margaret Clements. Here. Tron and Ray Randolph.
Here.
Oh, or can we share? We'll share. Scott Ferris.
Here.
Okay, we have all 9 members and a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. If you could please introduce the evidence for tonight.
Sure, I'd like to introduce the following items into the evidence. The Monroe County zoning ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County comprehensive plan as adopted and amended, the Monroe County subdivision control ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County Plan Commission rules of procedure as adopted and amended, and the cases that were legally advertised and scheduled for a hearing on tonight's agenda.
Move to approve.
Second. Been moved and seconded to approve the evidence. A vote yes is a vote to approve. Cheryl Munson,
Yes.
Edward Ullman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes, and also I didn't come off video to state that I was here, so for the record, I'd like to say I'm here as well.
Sounds good. Scott Ferris.
Here.
Yes.
All right, that carries 9-0.
Okay. Do we?
Oh, With regard to the agenda, I'd like to move to approve, but have there been changes?
Yes, the rezone petition for Sunset Hill has been continued. So that's item number 3 on the agenda. Sunset Hill Historic Preservation Overlay Rezone Preliminary Hearing. And that's for the property in Perry Township. It includes 28 parcels. So that petition has been continued to the next Plan Commission meeting.
So I'd like to move to approve with that amendment.
Second.
All right, I'll call the roll to approve the agenda with the amendment that item 3 has been continued. A vote yes is a vote to approve with that amendment. Edward Ullman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Julie Thomas. Yes. Mark Clements,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes,
Scott Ferris,
Yes.
Jeff Morris,
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 9-0.
Okay, we have minutes from May 21st, 2024 and June 18th, 2024. If we could get a motion to approve those 2 months worth of minutes.
Motion. Second.
A vote yes is a vote to approve both sets of minutes. Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Julie Thomas. Yes. Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
yes,
Scott Ferris,
Yes.
Jeff Morris,
Yes.
Cheryl Munson,
Yes.
Edward Ullman.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay, we have no administrative business tonight, so we'll jump straight into unfinished business. The first item is PUO-24-2. This is the Cutright Boat Storage PUD outline plan, and this is the final hearing. So Drew, I'll turn it over to you.
And sorry, excuse me, Drew, can I interject real quick, kind of a sidebar comment? Is anybody else having issues with the Wi-Fi? I can't get my packet to load.
No, mine's working fine. Did you use the password that's on the wall there?
Yeah, it just says that there's no internet access through the MCG public one.
Let me see who's working in TSD.
I have a paper copy of this petition if you want
Or that way we can get started. I apologize for the interruption.
to. Okay. So this is PUO PU-24-2, the Cutright Boat Storage PUD outline plan. This is the final hearing. It was heard at the last Plan Commission meeting on August 20th. It's two parcels. One of those parcels is 4 acres and the other is 11.3 acres. It's in Polk Township, Section 16 at 8370 South State Road 446. And it's currently zoned Forest Reserve, and it's in the Eco Area 3, which is the Lake Monroe watershed. All right. So this petition, the petitioner is requesting to establish a planned unit development on the subject property and is represented by Mike Carmen. The intent behind establishing the PUD is to operate the property under a mixed set of uses, including boat storage, residential, and office. If the planned unit development outline plan is approved by the county commissioners, the petitioner will be directed to submit a planned unit development plan. The petitioner owns and operates the Cutright Marina located in Lake Monroe, approximately 2 miles north of the petition site. The petitioner states in his letter, the proposed boat storage facility will allow for storage of boat trailers during the duration of renters maintaining the boat on the water by rental of the boat slip at the petitioner's marina. In addition to establishing boat storage use on the property, the petitioner is proposing to perform a Type E administrative subdivision to adjust the lot lines between the 2 parcels to create an Area A and an Area B. Area A will consist of 5 acres and will contain the boat storage, residence, and office uses, and Area B will consist of 10.4 acres. Petitioner did submit a amended PUD outline plan and statement with before this meeting tonight, and it is included in your packet. Here we have the location map and the site conditions map. There are some slopes greater than 18% on the property. As a reminder, Area 3 of the Environmental Constraints Overlay does protect against any land disturbance activity on slopes greater than 18%. Here we have the current zoning map, Forest Reserve, and the comprehensive plan has it designated as farm and forest. All right, so on the screen, you have some definitions of the current Chapter 802 of the Monroe County Zoning Ordinance for the use of boat storage, single-family dwelling, and office. Area A of this proposed PUD will consist of boat storage facilities, the residence, and an office. According to the petitioner, approximately 1.7 acres of Area A will be utilized for the boat storage use, with an expansion area of less than half an acre at the north end of Area A for possible future growth. The amended PUD statement and outline plan, which is Exhibit 4 in your packet, details that Area A will be used for open and covered boat storage with a maximum of 50 open boat storage spaces and a maximum of 30 covered boat storage spaces. The existing manufactured home residence on the property is to be upgraded and remodeled to serve as a residential use and also be utilized as an office for the boat storage use. The petitioner intends and expects the residence in Area A to be the home of an on-site / live-in manager for that boat storage facility. Continuing on with more aspects of this PUD in Area B. The amended PUD statement indicates that the following permitted uses be defined in the proposed Conservation Residential 2.5 or CVR zone found in the County Development Ordinance. So those uses are single-family detached dwelling, short-term rental, owner-occupied, tourist home or cabin, and home-based business. So those are a set of uses that the petitioner is wanting to establish in this area. With an underlying zone of the proposed CVR from the County Development Ordinance. Development standards for Area B to follow, as I stated, the CVR zone, including the additional standard that a front yard and building line setback from State Road 446, the right-of-way is 40 feet. For the entire PUD, the following design standards apply to both Area A and B. And those are driveways, parking areas, and boat storage areas will be stone and not paved. And they also indicate on the outline plan that no landscaping will be required in lieu of preserving the areas that are over 18% in slope on the property. There's also a phasing plan that's outlined in the amendment. It talks about the Type E administrative subdivision to be completed within 6 months to establish those new boundaries, the 5 acres and the 10.4 acres respectively. That indicates a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 with respect to cleaning up the site, development of the open boat storage facility and upgrade of the remodel of the manufactured home, and the development of 2 single-family home sites in Area B to be completed in 3 to 5 years following a subdivision procedure. Additionally, only 1 home site per legal lot of record. As an open phase, meaning that there is no time frame for this completion, the petitioner asks that additional covered boat storage in Area A after completion of phase 2, and the development of additional covered boat storage is dependent upon market demand for such storage. As for the subdivision, the use Area B may be divided into 2 lots in accordance with the subdivision control ordinance rules and standards. And finally, the above notwithstanding, the petitioner is required to comply with Chapter 11, which governs PUD creation in the county, and the states that the development plan shall be submitted to the planning department not more than 18 months following Board of Commissioners approval. And the development plan shall expire 2 years after approval unless grading and or building permits have been obtained and are still current and valid on that date. On the screen, we have the amended PUD outline plan. This is also included in your packet. It details a lot of the information that I just covered. And here now on the screen is the original letter to the Plan Commission that also served as the PUD statement and outline plan prior. It also included a rough draft of the site plan for the property that indicates Area A and B, as well as some of the future development to occur on the site, as well as drainage, the location of drainage infrastructure. So now on the screen, just zoom ins of that document or of that conceptual drawing. This is all included in the staff report. Here we have some imagery of the site that was provided by the petitioner, some historical imagery that gives an idea of how much debris is left on the site that the petitioner is intending to remove through this process and clean up the site. It also went to the Drainage Board on August 13th, 2024, and Kelsey Thetonia, the MS4 coordinator, left some comments with respect to that meeting. And it was basically the Drainage Board review that was ensuring that the entire development drains to the detention pond and that there was additional water quality treatment as necessary based on potential pollutants, as well as providing drainage easements. They also asked if there was any underground storage tanks on the site, and to which it was stated that there were not any underground storage tanks located on the site. Here are some figures that were pulled from the drainage report. And finally, we have the recommendation from the Planning Department. Staff recommends forwarding this petition to the Monroe County Board of Commissioners with a negative recommendation. The proposal for Area A does not align with the comprehensive plan designation of farm and forest. Additionally, the petitioner could petition for a rezone to the limited business zone to acquire the use of boat storage on the northern 4.0 acre parcel without the need of a PUD. The proposal for Area B could be achieved under the Forest Reserve zoning designation and therefore does not require a rezone to a PUD as proposed. I will now take any questions.
Mr. Enright Randolph.
I guess just one question. I asked it last time, and I kind of know the answer, but again, we've heard that if they go for a rezone, they could potentially get that allowable use. And I'm curious if planning had discussed it any further, if they would support a rezone request here, because that, I guess, implicates a lot of how to potentially move this forward. I don't mind the idea of moving away from a PUD to a rezone, but I'm curious if planning has any more firm position on a recommendation. And I know if they don't, I understand because it's not submitted as a rezone, but as that part of your kind of overview, I think we should have some sense of planning's position.
So, John, I want to make sure the recommendation is seen as kind of two parts. One is that the property itself does not comply with the comprehensive plan to be rezoned to a business district. A second part under the recommendation is that if a PUD can be otherwise achieved under a regular by right zoning district, that is what we would recommend. So I think
Right,
an
but you
important
can't,
question here is whether this site in particular is conducive to a business zoning district. So even if it could be achieved under an LB zone, we're not necessarily saying that the comprehensive plan would change to make it so that we would recommend approval of that.
right. Thank you, Jackie. I know that's the best you can answer the question. I hope you understand why I feel like I need to ask.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Knight Randolph. Do we have any other members of the Plan Commission who have questions for Drew? Okay, seeing none, we can turn to you, Mr. Carmen, as the petitioner's representative. You'll have 15 minutes.
Thank you. My current representative petitioner, Tom Greenman, is also here. Depending on how well I do, he'll have things to correct, supplement, or whatever. We'll see. I'm going to start, didn't plan to, with Tron's question because I don't think it got answered. I think he let Jackie off the hook. I don't care what the comprehensive plan says. There's no way they ever recommend approval of LB zoning on this site. They're just not going to do it. And you know that. We actually talked about that last month. And I think so. To suggest that it shouldn't be a PUD because they could do this in LB suggests that they would support an LB zone. And we know that's not true. Otherwise, they're offering you an alternative that is doomed for failure. And that's not right. But let's get back to the merits of this. So we talked about this before, and I don't want to just repeat, but I'm not sure everybody was here, and I'll kind of gloss over some highlights that were there. You may have a photograph there. That's a color photograph similar to a couple that were in the staff packet that Drew displayed. The black and whites are not as easily interpreted. This is just print off from the Elevate. It's going to be around for only a couple more months. It's already about half the time dysfunctional. It doesn't work well, but it still allowed me to print the photograph. And I believe this is dated 2011 on Elevate under the base maps. It was intended to show you history on this property a little bit. Now, as you get to other photographs over years, it's harder and harder to see because trees grow, things are growing, and things get covered up. This property, for maybe as much as 50 years, was used for boat storage, abandoning vehicles, abandoning tires. There was some type of a car repair shop on there at one time. That's what the photograph is showing you. This is what was there, condition, the existing condition. This has never been a forest reserve area. It has never been a farm and forest reserve area. It has been used perhaps improperly at one point. There would not have been zoning ordinances when it all started, but at some point there was a zoning ordinance that would not have permitted what was being done out there, and yet it continued and continued abated. And it's actually much worse than what this photograph shows. What you cannot see in there are the estimated 3,000 abandoned tires that they've already removed from the site. And there are more to go. The problem is at this point, they've got to wait for the grasses to die down and back down and get into the winter months so they can see, because they're covered and hidden for the most part. So we know there are more to be removed. They're not done. So going back again, a little bit of history, this entire parcel, the two parcels were owned by one. The only option was to purchase both, not just the area for the boat storage. And that actually makes some sense to do that and acquire all of it as part of a comprehensive plan, because the cleanup that needs to be done is across the 15 acres. It's not up there concentrated on the north 4 or 5 acres. It's widespread. And so a comprehensive cleanup and redevelopment of the area seemed to be logical. Plus the PUD had the advantage of eliminating the concerns that you might have with an LB zone, which would have been, as staff keeps saying, well, they could do an LB zone and that allows boat storage. But we know it also allows a whole bunch of other things that you would never want down there. We would not want down there. There are a lot of other permitted uses in the LB zone. A straight rezoning is not appropriate for this location. The PUD allows to tailor the uses as well as do more comprehensive the whole thing. Why 2 residential uses on the south 10 acre piece? because that's what's been there before. The remnants of foundations or footers are still obvious. Those sites and what looks to be the evidence of the septic sites, septic field sites for those two residences are still visible and can be seen. And that was the thought of designating that area, we call it Area B, just to distinguish from the north, for residential use only. It's largely what had been done properly historically was two residential uses down there. And we proposed to put that back in, but we're not in a hurry to do it. We've not only got the cleanup to finish, we got the boat storage area to get developed before turning attention to rebuilding the couple of residential structures down there to put those back in use. When you look at the requested permitted uses for that area, all of those come straight out of the ordinance of what other uses are permitted in a single family home in residential zonings, the home-based business, the tourist cabin. Now, that's only in certain zones, I understand that. But this is an area, that type of use would actually be appropriate given proximity to the lake, proximity to the marina, the concept of a tourist cabin rental in this area, and very easy travel to the lake and to make use of the lake. It seems to be a logical connection. So, but that's that. So we have two tracks. The need to move, we'll do it through a type E administrative subdivision, is to move the lot line to enlarge the 4-acre tract to take a little bit of the north end of the 10, is to encompass the drainage to pond area. That really, while it's going to serve all of it, it primarily serves that north area, and we want that on the same track. So moving the line is strictly for that, to be able to safely designate Area A and the boat storage unit and limited use there for the office versus Area B, which would be the residential use with a couple in-home type modified uses, home-based business, for example. In terms of the staff comments with regard to comprehensive plan, the plan is the plan. Your obligation or the guidance on a zoning petition is that you consider and give due consideration to the comp plan when considering a zoning petition. It is not a template of the only things that you can allow in this area, but it is part of a plan. But it also is a product of a very broad paintbrush that painted a whole bunch of the area at one time green. And we're getting some modification of that. If you're going to adhere to only the comp plan and say that's the only thing you consider what that would allow, there's a whole bunch of the current proposed zoning map, that some of which you got some debate and discussion on last night, that are inappropriate because they're changes of use over what the comp plan calls for. But so acknowledging the plan, but also acknowledge that we're talking about a very limited intrusion, and think what it means. A boat storage use less than 2 miles to the marina where the boats are going into the water in and out. It takes traffic, boat trailer hauling off the road instead of going back and forth from home or some further distance to find that place to store the trailer during the season while the boat's in the water, and then be able to retrieve the trailer, pull the boat out of the water at the end of the boating season and take it back home wherever it's going to go. Some would be longer term storage, even out of season. But that's why this location is attractive. You look at historic use, nobody's complaining. There's not a neighbor that has voiced, to my knowledge, both trying to contact him and even from last meeting, that there's not been one voice of opposition to it. And in fact, the only active feedback I've had directly was supportive. Great to see it, get it cleaned up. Happy to see that finally happening. It's a good use. The marina's well run. This boat storage will be well run. Same owner, and let's do it. It makes sense. And I wish they would put it in writing, send it in, but people do what they do. So but to my knowledge, and the only response we've had from any neighbors or anybody else outside of staff has been supportive. The standards, I don't want to confuse the two residential uses on Area B, assuming this gets approved and we go forward. We're not committing to subdivision that to two separate lots. Likely that would come at a later time. There'll be whatever subdivision rules have to comply with at the time. But the long term, Mr. Greenwood would rather not be the owner of two additional residences. He's really not into the home rental business. That's not the idea of subdividing that would be for the purpose to make them sellable, that someone could buy one single-family home there at the side. He'll plan, his intentions is to go ahead and build them. So he'd be selling a lot with a home on it, not a home to be built. But at the same time, until subdivision gets done, they're not sellable, except somebody wants to buy the whole parcel, live in one and rent the other, do something. And if that certainly is possible, the preference would be to get them set up on a subdivision as separate legal lots with the opportunity then to sell them and allowed to be owner occupied. A couple of comments, and I want to leave time for Tom. The open area issue that was in the staff report about that doesn't dedicate any open area. Well, there really isn't unless we do a subdivision, create a lot to define that open area. But we've done the appropriate thing, and I think, and then really perhaps even a better thing than just finding an open area and say, well, we're going to dedicate that to some third party, transfer it to some third party. I think Drew said 18%. I believe the site plan shows that a 15% slope line. It's on page 17 of the packet of the report is the site plan, and it has that in that slope line designated, so you can actually see it on there. It's really, they're outside of the buildable area. The 15% slope line starts almost at that same point of the edge of the buildable area site, and all of that. And you can see there on the right-hand picture, so much of that, all of this area, and then area up in there would be put to a conservation or conservancy easement to restrict any development in there, to prevent it, actually, to maintain trees, the grass, to maintain that basically as a no-touch area. And that serves to preserve that. It serves to address any concerns with the ECO3 area, because of the huge portion of this area that's going to be set aside and dedicated and not disturbed. And then we have, with the drainage pond in place, the building sites within the buildable area, again, doesn't disturb the ECO3 because the home sites, all that area to the right side of that area B is buildable area as is defined in the ordinance, as is shown on the Elevate mapping program. So it serves well as two single-family home sites, and then everything else is above. We're not committing to overbuilding the site. That's the reference to the covered storage. By the way, covered storage is a 3-site. I think this is in the petition. It was intended to be stated there. It's not a fully enclosed building. It's a cover 3-sided structure that's open on one side. So it's not, these are not many self-storage units with sliding garage doors where we're going to put a boat in it and close the door and call it covered storage. It's open-sided on one side. You'll notice there's no specific request for signage. Mr. Greenman is not intending much signage. Once the storage facility is developed, his intent is through fencing and then with shrubs and other plantings, he intends to make this not readily visible from the road. It's not his desire to have that and draw people through that means. A small sign, so if somebody's turning in, they know if they got the right place because there's a relatively small sign there that says it is. But otherwise, they're going to be set back from the road, and his intent is to screen them, fencing first, and with additional plantings on the outside of the fence. That will take a little time to mature, obviously, but already, if you go by, you can see that you don't have to go very far into the lot to know that you can't see much of anything, and that will be enhanced with specific plantings for that purpose. I don't know, you have anything you want to add or correct? Deferring to Tom Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Carmen. Mr. Greenman, you'll have the remaining 2.5 minutes on the clock.
Hi. Drive by this property probably 6 times a day or a week, and it has a huge amount of road frontage. I pass the water tower, and there's 5 or 6 houses across the road from this property. So we're having a density much less than the other side of the road. None of those people have complained. I think my back neighbor is Dr. Trafalgar, and he actually wrote you a letter saying he wanted me to do this. He's behind me and on the side of me. We have approximately 18 rental boats at the marina that we rent out, and 10 of them are smaller pontoon boats that we would want to pull over there and store. And I think my wife Phoebe, who's our leasing manager, can say that she's had at least 25 or 30 people asked to, where can we put our trailer? And our idea would be to put it over there. The reason we made it the first 4 acres a little bit bigger is because there's an existing pond on the property. And I told the engineers, well, we should put the pond where there's already a pond. But the pond is slightly across the property line, so we want to make it big enough to have the pond on the property. We want to go with gravel because I think more water will not run off and soak into the ground. If we do have, we want to have lighting, but we want the lights to be the LED lights that don't put any light up. They'd all be focused down, dark sky friendly, because it is a state forest and it's national forest, and we don't want to ruin the ambiance of being out in the country. As far as 3-sided buildings, I didn't really think I wanted to do buildings, but it turns out that everybody shrink wraps their boats. When they shrink wrap the boat and unwrap it, there's a huge amount of pollution. Now, this year we saved everyone from last year you're supposed to try to save the wraps. But if you had a 3-sided building, you could just put a tarp over it and you wouldn't be creating that pollution, was the idea. And there's some Amish people that live south of there. We're gonna see if they'd want to build a 3-sided building so that we could not pollute as much.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Mr. Agreement, but the 15 minutes are up.
Well,
Thank you.
that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
If you could speak to how many people want to have a boat trailer stored, but
Do any members of the Plan Commission have questions for the petitioner or the petitioner's representative? Okay, seeing none, we can turn now to public comment portion. So if there's anybody here in the room who wishes to speak in favor of this petition, please come forward, sign in and state your name. If there is anyone online who wishes to speak in favor of this petition, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, seeing none, if there's anybody here in the room or online who wishes to speak against this petition, please come to the front of the room or to the podium or raise your virtual hand if you're online. Okay, seeing none, we can come back to the Plan Commission for conversation. Do any members of the Plan Commission have any comments or questions?
I think I'll share just a friendly comment in the positive direction. One of the things that, and I know I already mentioned this last time, so I'll try to keep it a lot more brief, but one of the things that concerned me the most about the idea of boat storage or even just trailer storage in that area is just the concern of 446. As we all know, people like to go rather quick on 446. It's not a slow moving road. And if the petitioner's boat ramper area is off of Allen's Creek, that's south of this location. So in my mind, I envision a lot of trailers turning left into this parking lot, and the idea of a truck and trailer sitting on 446 with oncoming traffic and stuff. So my biggest concern in that area was just the feasibility, the view, the entrance and everything. And I drove out there and I was rather impressed because on the map, it looks like it sits on a curve. But, and I wish that this color copy we have in front of us went a little bit further south, but there's a lot of shoulder on either side of the road, and you can actually see that entrance, the current entrance that sits there from a good distance in either direction. So I was kind of impressed in favor of that. And I think that from a safety standpoint, from a highway safety standpoint, I was really satisfied with that. And that was not that concern of mine kind of got brushed off. So that's just my one comment I wanted to share with the rest of the.
Thank you, Mr. Ullman. Mr. Enright Randolph?
I just guess I want to know if I'm reading this correctly. The amended PUD statement and outline plan. This is actually in your report, so page 5 of the packet. Exhibit 4 details the area A will be used for open and covered boat storage with a maximum of 50 open boat storage and 30 covered boat storage spaces. So we're talking about potentially 80 boats. Am I reading that right?
that a question to staff or the petitioner?
To staff with the interpretation of the amendment. I'm reading it
Yeah.
as they have a maximum of 50 open boat storage spaces and 30 covered. So that would be 80.
Yes, that's what it reads in the amended PUD statement in Exhibit 4.
Okay,
And Tron, Mr. Carmen came to the podium, so I'm going to let
I-
him answer your question as well.
I saw that. Thank you.
If I may, don't know, could do 50, but the problem with the PUD is you have to specify as much as you might do. It's really going to be what the development would allow. The chart that Steve Rehab, engineer, had put together as part of a site plan counts out to be, it looks like 40, maybe 42. We're not sure that it can do more than that, maybe not even that, which you really get down and put out the measurements and turning radius and aisleway and all those things. But the 50 was just a high number to make sure we don't short ourselves and we get out there and develop. We say we can do 40 to 44 would actually fit within the allowed space, then it'd be 44. If the 50 is a concern and you want to, you'd like to see that cut down, we could commit to probably cutting down to 45 or, so I don't mean to be asking for more than we do. It's just until the final design is done, you actually measure out the required
Right.
space for parking the trailer. It became what would that number be? So, okay.
Okay.
No,
thank
I
you,
get
Mr.
that.
Carmen.
Thank you. I appreciate confirmation, and I understand kind of wanting to build in some flexibility because the site itself might provide some restraints. So I guess the other question is the design I'm looking at, that's 80 spots. I guess my real question is that's a larger number than I feel like was being discussed as far as actually having it in there. And I was really curious of what that would look like built out. And I didn't count to see if that's 40 spots. Is that diagram supposed to be showing 40 spots?
The diagram on the screen
Or
is
80,
showing,
sorry.
the diagrams on the screen are showing the conceptual drawings of the first area. In their original PUD outline plan, they had indicated that there's acreage to the north of this area as described on the screen that could
Uh-huh.
feasibly create additional space should the market demand more boat storage.
Okay. I guess my reason for kind of having more of a site plan question is because this is a PUD with an outline plan. So this does kind of dictate what the site plan could eventually look like. And that draws into more questions and concerns of what the environmental impact is. I'll leave it there. We'll see where my other colleagues lie. I feel if you do move this forward, having something like that for the Board of Commissioners would be very helpful. It just kind of leaves a little bit of uncertainty, and that's where I'm at. So thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Carmen, you can answer Tron's last question.
Well,
if
just,
you would.
I want to clarify, and if it's poor draftsmanship, that's my fault. I apologize, but the issue about the future was if the conceptual plan is, as Drew alluded to, is open storage with in the front of it, the east side, some, I think it's 8 spaces for covered storage there. The amended plan tried to specify that if market demands justify it, in the buildable area north of this, on this conceptual plan, would develop up to a maximum of 20, I think it's 20 covered boat storage spaces up there. So they're not on the conceptual plan now because don't know if we're going to do it. And this really started with the open storage, but there with the buildable area room that's to the north of this site within that area A, the possibility of covered boat storage up there if it's warranted. So, yeah.
Thank you. Could you come to the microphone, please, so everybody can hear? Thank you.
Really beautiful concrete storm cellar to the north of where we want to build this. And that it's in a manufactured home. And I don't have any plan of tearing out that poured concrete storm cellar to get boat storage, because that gives the people that are in that trailer place to go if there's a tornado. So I don't, and it would be expensive to tear it out. So I don't really intend to go north at all. This is probably where I want to be with it. And I think it's 30 or 40 spaces.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Do any other members of the Plan Commission, Mr. Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I have a question. From my reading of this, no other LB use would be permitted in this PUD other than the boat storage. Is that correct?
Yes, the way that the PUD is written is Area A will have 3 uses available, which is boat storage, single-family residential, and the third was an office.
Okay, and quite honestly, I'm typically would not support a PUD on a piece of property this small. But in order to get this use, this seems to be the really only feasible way to get the use without putting the county in a vulnerable situation in terms of approving a zoning and then having to go through the list of you can't have this, you can't have that, and a petitioner possibly wanting to hold back a opportunity from the LB use in case they sell the property. So the petitioner actually is, for lack of a better term, hamstringing themselves. Petitioners are hamstringing themselves by going to this extent of the PUD. What they're proposing is in some ways demonstrably to the benefit of the county. It reduces traffic of boats up and down 446. It does diminish the to a degree, the environmental impact of travel. And as petitioner pointed out, not wrapping boats and being able to keep people from dragging their boat all the way off site, a good distance away from the lake and being closer to this site, I think is advantageous to boaters and to the community. So those are things that I think are significant and leaning toward a justifiable request for a PUD here. Otherwise, with 15 acres and limited uses like this, I just absolutely cannot understand why somebody would come forward with a PUD. But with what's been presented, I think the argument for going toward a PUD here actually makes sound sense. And that was just my question and observation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsburgh. Any other? Yeah, Councilmember Munson.
I just wanted to offer a comment. I've driven past this area and I didn't see lots of traffic. It was just normal traffic on 446. What impresses me about the proposed project is the continuation of the abandoned tire cleanup. The owners have gone to considerable lengths to remove abandoned tires that have been discarded on Area B. Is that correct? And plan to continue this in their development of Area B. And I think that is an advantage to the county and to the community. So I tend to favor this development, and I hope the right zoning can be identified.
Thank you. Any other, Mr. Enright Randolph? I see your hand raised.
Yes, and I guess it goes back to kind of the maximum use potential storage for this area, and I guess I have a two-part question. I'll go with my question first, and then I was also wondering if Kelsey Patonia had any concerns kind of along this question. And Kelsey Patonia is our program, our stormwater program manager. A new title. I don't know if that goes effective right now or at 2025, but with that, would they still have to meet all of the stormwater compliances with release rate and such if they did decide to max out the boat storage with 80 potential storage spots? That increases some of the impacts and pervious and impervious kind of surface calculations. And I guess I'm asking that question because if we're creating an outline plan where they can do that, I would really want to make sure that they can still meet that compliance measure, or do we need to have some type of language where it says that they need to meet that compliance measure, and if that reduces their maximum capacity for storage, then that's just, needs to be done. I hope I'm asking that question straightforward enough. I guess I'm really curious about kind of the impact of that type of storage if they do expand on our stormwater and drainage.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Kelsey Latonia. Yeah, so if the plan changes from what the Drainage Board has already looked at, if there's a substantial change, like going beyond this proposed about 2-acre development, we will look at detention again and require all of that to be in compliance with Chapter 761, our stormwater ordinance, including the release rate specified. So yes, any changes will require review, and whatever is proposed in the development plan, we will review it to make sure it meets our ordinance. And if it doesn't, then we either will ask for changes, we won't approve it. It may go back to Drainage Board, whatever we need to do to make sure that it meets our requirements. So.
Perfect, thank you. And I guess my part 2 was like to planning or legal, like if let's say this is adopted with the maximum 80, does that allow them to do that regardless of kind of the stormwater impact and the overlaying of the ordinances? Can all of that be addressed at the site plan phase?
So this PUD does not waive any of the stormwater ordinance requirements.
Okay. Cool, thank you. And I wanted just to mention, I agree with Mr. Pittsburgh's statement, and thank you.
Any other
Just-
comments?
I
Sorry,
was
Jackie.
going to ask for the record something that Mr. Carmen said during his testimony. You maybe indicated that there wouldn't be a subdivision in Area B. Is that correct? If so, you might just iterate what the permitted uses are for Area B, because right now you just have single family detached. And if you have more than one of those, it wouldn't be single family.
The plan calls for permitted uses in Area B, 2 single-family dwellings. And
On
there's a
one
few-
lot.
No, it says 2, and it said 2 from the beginning. Now, if the amendment is confusing on that, I apologize for that, but it was 2 from the beginning, and we talked about 2 last time, and it continues as 2. The issue of subdivision, the staff report keeps suggesting that we're mandated to do a subdivision first. And I disagree with that. We may never subdivide that. It may always be 2 single-family homes on that one Area B, which is 10 acres. But the possibility of subdividing at some future time, having to meet subdivision ordinance requirements when doing so is certainly possible, but that would be for the purpose of allowing one to be sold separately as opposed to always having 2 on a single lot under single ownership.
Okay, so just as a point of clarification, under phasing, you say phase 3, development of 2 single-family homes in Area B to be completed in 3 to 5 years following a subdivision.
Well,
You want to,
I think the following subdivision was tagged for another line that apparently in editing got dropped. That was, the following subdivision would be separate lots, yes. We recognize right now it's one legal lot of record, yes.
Do any other members of the Plan Commission have questions or comments?
I have a question because I may make a motion. Mr. Carmen's comments regarding the Area B residential structures being 2 on one lot, is that now going to be reflected in the record as 2 residential structures on one lot of record? Is that what I understood?
So in the phasing plan, in phase 3, which is on the screen, it reads development of the 2 single-family home sites in Area B to be completed in 3 to 5 years following a subdivision. Only 1 home site per legal lot of record. That's how it reads in the amendment. So I'm not sure if Mr. Carmen wants that to be clarified or corrected.
I don't have that in front of me. If that's what it is, that's wrong. 2 single-family homes on 1 legal lot of record for now, possibly subdivided at some future date, but regardless, the PUD use area B calls for permitted use 2 single-family residences, and that's what we're requesting. Thank you.
Ms. Clements, you can go next.
So I'd like to ask staff then, given that, what are the maximum number of single-family detached homes that could exist on those 2 lots?
Sorry, what was the question?
What is the maximum number of detached single-family homes that could be placed on those 2 lots?
So right now, under the zoning ordinance, by right, you could have a single-family residence and then a detached accessory dwelling unit, but that second dwelling would be accessory and limited to 1,000 square feet, which I don't believe is their intent.
I see. But that's for 1 lot.
1 lot.
And for the other lot, it's the same?
If they were to subdivide that, they could just have 1 single-family home per lot without that limitation I just mentioned.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from members of the Plan Commission? If there are none, I'll make a quick comment. I see this from both sides, and I think I'm conflicted, but the more we discuss this tonight, the more concerned I get, and the more I think this is going to lead to problems that the county has to deal with in the future. So if there are any other comments, you're welcome to speak up, or if anybody has a motion they would like to make.
Well, I would like to just add that in general, I'm in favor of allowing this PUD because I think in general, it's an improvement over the previous situation, with the cleaning up of what has been done. So with that, I just want to let my colleagues know that that's my position, but
Thank you. Is anybody willing to make a motion?
Working on it. Okay, I've got it. In case number PUO -24-2, this is a request for planned unit development located at 8370 South State Road 446, which is in Polk Township and consisting of 15.3 acres. I move that we send forward this request with a positive recommendation based on the findings of fact and in accordance with the petitioner's submitted PUD statement and the outline plan as discussed here tonight. And by as discussed here tonight, I mean to indicate that Mr. Carmen's remarks about the Area B residential portion would be 2 residences on 1 legal lot of record, in which case one would be a primary residence and the other would be ancillary or an auxiliary residence connected to the first one and subject to zoning restriction. That is my motion in full.
Second.
Okay, it's been motion and second to send a favorable recommendation to the Board of Commissioners for the Cut-Right Boat Storage PUD outline plan. This is a final hearing, and there was a clarification in the motion to state that it would amend the petitioner's outline plan to state Area B would include 2 single-family residences on 1 lot, with 1 being accessory to the other, with a requirement that they follow the underlying zoning district. A vote yes is a vote to send a favorable recommendation. Dee Owens,
No.
Terry Pittsford,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
No.
Margaret Clements,
yes.
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Scott Ferris,
Yes.
Jeff Morris,
No.
Cheryl Munson,
Yes.
Edward Olman.
Yes.
Okay, the motion is approved 6-3.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We will turn now to new business. The first item up tonight is SPP 24-2. This is the Muirfield Phase 5 subdivision preliminary plat amendment 2. This is the preliminary hearing with a waiver of final hearing requested. So Drew, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Okay, this is the Muirfield Phase 5 preliminary plat amendment 2. It's located with respect to 10 parcels on 22.04 acres in North Muirfield Drive and West Prestwick Court.
Drew, before you want to get started, I want to state for the record that Councilmember Munson is leaving for the evening.
All right, thank you. Okay, so this did go to the Plat Committee on August 15th, and the Plat Committee voted 3-0 to forward this petition with a positive recommendation to the Planning Commission. It had 2 recommendations considering some of the details of this proposal that I'll come back to in a moment to give you a little bit more background since this is the preliminary hearing. All right, so this property comprises of Phase 5 of the Muirfield subdivision. The entire Muirfield subdivision was approved previously in 2001. At that time of the original subdivision approval, a street tree waiver was approved. Although Phase 5 was amended through the preliminary plat approval in 2012, this preliminary plat expired, thus leading to subsequent preliminary plat amendment filing in 2016. Filing under this petition is the second preliminary plat amendment for Phase 5, which involves relocating a portion of unconstructed sidewalk within the phase. And the total number of lots will not change with this amendment. That is staying at 10 lots total, and no other development changes are proposed, only the sidewalks relocation. There are no other waiver requests with this petition as well. Originally, the petitioner had planned to relocate the unconstructed sidewalk on the west side of North Muirfield, that is currently on the west side of North Muirfield Drive along Lot 6 to the east side of North Muirfield Drive for approximately 480 feet of sidewalk. This design originally included the installation of 2 crosswalks along North Muirfield Drive to access the relocated sidewalk. However, this design was met with concern from neighbors and subsequently from the Plat Committee during their meeting. At that Plat Committee meeting, the Plat Committee members requested that the petitioner evaluate the potential for moving the southwest crosswalk from its current proposed location to the intersection of North Muirfield Drive and West Prestwick Court, where pedestrians would more expect a crosswalk to exist. And 2, the petitioner evaluate the potential of reducing the number of proposed crosswalks from 2 to 1 and retain the sidewalk placement on the east side of North Muirfield Drive traveling up to Phase 1, Section 2 of the Muirfield subdivision to provide sidewalk continuity to West Lost Man's Lane. Now, later on, the Planning Department met with the petitioner and discussed these recommendations made by the Plat Committee and other possible alternatives to this plan. During this meeting, the petitioner provided an alternative option to keep the sidewalk on the west side of North Muirfield Drive, which would eliminate the need for crosswalks, and rearrange it in a way to accommodate some of the terrain, slope, and erosion issues that are occurring along Lot 6, where the sidewalk was originally placed. On the screen, we have the location map. Site conditions map here as well. The red slopes showing slopes greater than 25%. And you'll note a stream does come through the property on the north side and then continues on. So here on the screen now is the original proposed relocation of the sidewalk that incorporates the 2 crosswalks in question. That sidewalk is identified in yellow. And now we have the newest edition of the proposal, which maintains that the sidewalk be on the west side of North Muirfield Drive and is just relocated a bit more to the west to accommodate some of the slope constraints and erosion issues occurring at the south end of Lot 6 on the screen. This new version of the plan does require additional right-of-way dedication, and the petitioner had discussed this with the highway engineer And it is shown on the plat that you are looking on the screen now, and it's was provided by the Todd Borgman surveyor. So all in all, this petition is part of a process that the petitioner is going through in order to get all of the subdivisions completed with respect to public improvements. So the staff report does include some background information on the other phases of north of the Muirfield subdivisions, including phase 1, section 2, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and phase 5, which is the petition tonight to relocate that sidewalk. So the petitioner is still working with staff with respect to other phases of this subdivision in order to get all of the improvements completed and return their subdivision improvement agreement bonds. Here we have some aerial pictometry that shows the current layout of the sidewalks within phase 5. You can see the sidewalk ends here right before lot 6 begins, this vacant lot that extends around the curve of North Muirfield Drive. Here we have some site photos of the site, or of the phase, excuse me. This is North Muirfield Drive, and you're traveling north along the roadway here, and then you just keep going. These photos are street view, so they are a bit dated. You can see in the top left photograph, the sidewalk ends at the intersection of West Prestwick Court, but now if you were to travel there today, you would see the sidewalk continue after that intersection until it reaches lot 6. And then here you are continuing north on North Muirfield Drive. And with respect to the petition, the sidewalk is going to be located on the left side of these pictures, just a bit farther west than was originally planned, as stated, to accommodate some existing erosion and other slope constraints. This is just traveling around that bend, moving north into phase 1 of the Muirfield subdivision. I will go back to this one. You can start to see the beginning here in the bottom right photograph. There is a bridge that does narrow a bit with respect to the shoulder of the road. And it is with respect to the petitioner's understanding, and I believe the highway department as well, that keeping the sidewalk on the west side of the road through this area is the best way forward, because there are some additional slope constraints on the east side of North Muirfield Drive once you pass over the bridge and into phase 1. So it's trying to keep the continuity on one side of the road throughout this area. Here we have the highway comments that were provided for the staff report. This is all included in that packet. Also, it's the comments from the highway engineer, Paul Satterley, as well as Ben Ayers, the project manager. And then Stormwater did not provide any comments at this time. Okay, here we have the advised letter to the Board of Commissioners, as well as the Plan Commission, stating their request for the relocation of the sidewalk. And here is the preliminary plat that depicts that sidewalk's location. We did receive some letters of opposition before the plat committee hearing. So there were a number of property owners that were concerned about relocating the sidewalk with respect to safety. And of course, these letters were submitted prior to the revised version of the plan that now keeps the sidewalk on the west side of North Muirfield Drive. Planning staff did meet with a group of concerned neighbors regarding these safety concerns. But again, that was before the plat committee meeting. So I'm not sure if any of those members of the public are in attendance tonight or are online, but they may offer their comments to you this evening. I'm just going to scroll through these because this is all included in the packet. And we do have a rather long petition sheet signed here as well. Okay, that brings me to staff's recommendation. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat amendment for the Muirfield Phase 5 based on the finding that the proposed preliminary plat meets the subdivision control ordinance and is subject to the highway engineer and MS4 coordinator reports. I will now take any questions.
I'll make a comment, Drew, and I just want to thank you and the petitioner for working together to move the sidewalk back to the west side of the road, because I think that's a much better solution than what was originally proposed with having a crosswalk in the middle of the curve. So thank you. Are there any other questions or comments, Mr. Ferris?
So with the new proposed option, and I think you talked to it briefly, is there anybody opposing at this point the new option? Anybody?
So when this packet was created, I did send out an email blast to some of the concerned neighbors that the petition had changed and that the hearing date was set for this evening. No one replied immediately with an opposition to that packet publishing, but they may have been saving their comments for this evening. I'm not sure.
Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, my question's a little unorthodox, and I'm sorry that Mr. Schilling isn't here because I looked through all of the phases and where there are problems still with existing sidewalk not completed, slope doesn't meet ADA, et cetera, there's very little money in the credit letter left for that particular phase. And then in the phases where it looks like things were done right, there's more money left and they're going to request that it be released. I don't know if there's any way to combine all of this to make sure that all of this gets done, whether approving this modification can be contingent on meeting all of the other sidewalk requirements in the other phases as noted by highway, or if we can merge the credit dollar. I don't know what we can do to help make sure that this neighborhood gets finished out the right way without the county taxpayer picking up the tab.
I think that's a great suggestion and comment. I think I would suggest a condition of approval to state that we would ask for a revised letter of credit equal to the amount of this work if approved. And that would be based on an engineer's estimate or NDOT estimates.
Okay, but that only takes care of this phase.
That would
So
only
we
take
can't,
care of this.
we can't go back to the other phases and get this stuff corrected. And that's frustrating.
The developer has made some progress on completing out some of these improvements. And I do believe that they're close. So as far as subdivisions go with less money than what it takes to finish, we're close. But I do know that we're only allowed to use the money set out in each phase for that phase.
Yeah.
So we can't make.
You know what I figured, but I thought I'd throw that out there to see if we
Yeah.
can do anything. But I like the idea of the condition, so thank you for that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, Mr. Ullman?
I just simply want to echo the same thing you said about, I really appreciate the time put in by staff and the petitioner to find an amendment to the original thing that they brought to the plat committee about moving it across the road. I think that the biggest struggle here, and something kind of as we listen to the petitioner's presentation, is just the negotiation and the balance between environmental impact and working with the environment as well as human safety and that balance and making sure that we're catering to both needs. So.
Okay, any other questions or comments from members of the Plan Commission? If not, we will turn to the petitioner or the petitioner's representative. If you'd like to come forward and speak to this, you'll have 15 minutes. If you could sign in and state your name, please.
Yes, my name is Todd Borgman. I work with Smith Design Group. We're the civil engineer, land surveyor for this project. First of all, I'd like to thank the Plan Commission and the planning staff for everything. I know everyone had a late night on Tuesday, so we'll make this as brief as I can. But mainly, I'd just like to echo Mr. Morris and Mr. Oldham's points. Yes, there was a problem with the sidewalk. We had highway out. They agreed. We worked with planning staff. We worked with highway. We worked with the neighbors to figure out the best solution that everyone agrees with. And this is it. And we appreciate your support on it, just like we have everyone else's. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, there are none. We can turn now to public comment. So if there's anybody here in the room or online that wishes to speak in favor of this petition, if you're in the room, please come forward. If you're online, please raise your virtual hand. If there's anybody here in the room that wishes to speak against this petition, please come to the podium. If you're online, go ahead and raise your virtual hand and we'll get to you momentarily. You could sign in and state your name. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
I gotta move the mic down a little bit. I'm considerably shorter than the previous speaker. My name's Erica Knuth, and I am a resident within Phase 5. And I didn't know whether to come up to say that I support it or that I don't support it because I have a little bit of each, to be honest. We are, as a community, very, very pleased that we don't have crosswalks. We were very concerned about the danger of folks crossing on what's essentially a blind curve. So I'm very happy with that part. The continuing concern that I have about the sidewalk is the moving of it. And I admit I don't know all the details behind that. And it's, although it's a personal view I'm going to present, I can tell you that it's representative of a lot of people in the community. A lot of us have dogs. I walk 2 great big Labradors all the time, and I frequently enter a spot on the sidewalk where somebody else is coming. I step out into the street because I have 2 big dogs that have not learned to not jump on people. That happens with a lot of folks in the neighborhood. We always we'll stop and say hi, but a lot of times we'll at least try to keep dogs, kids, whatever, apart. What concerns me about moving the sidewalk is there's still going to be this 2-foot ditch where that gas line is, and there's still going to be water running down that and eroding further. If I were to try to step into the street with my dogs right there because somebody was coming, I would break a leg. I mean, it's not safe. Not everybody's going to do that. Frankly, if that ditch is still there, I'll never take the dogs that way on the sidewalk. There's a lot of sidewalk the other direction, but that's a concern. I know it's there. Not everybody does. And that's my concern about kind of leaving the hole right there. I understand that wasn't Mr. Meacham that put it there. It was the gas company so they could dig a line for a trench. I get all of that. So I fully understand and support where we are right now. And like I said, our biggest concern was really those crosswalks. So I'm just presenting one additional concern to moving it sideways. The other thing that I have neighbors that are concerned about is just the pitch of the road there. And I don't know if that falls within Mr. Meacham's responsibility or not. You turn, you know how racetracks are banked? You turn left, right on your way down to that bridge, and the road is actually dumps you this way. Had a neighbor that slid off of it in an ice storm. Another car ran into their car when they slid off of it. Their 2 children had just been standing right in front of it. This doesn't happen all the time. I get that. It's a pretty rare occurrence, but that road, and that was mentioned in our petition, by the way, that road doesn't seem to be constructed quite right. I don't know if that's something we can do anything about or not, but those are my 2 remaining concerns. I am very thankful that everybody worked together and addressed our concern on the crosswalks. So thank you for that.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody else here in the room or online that wishes to speak against this petition? If you're in the room, come to the podium. If you're online, please raise your virtual hand. Not seeing anyone, we can turn back to the petitioner. If you would like 5 additional minutes to speak to the remonstration, you're welcome to take that.
Yes, I mean, I cannot speak to the slope of the road. We have not done as-built on that phase yet. But I will say, as far as the ditch, we were out there with Ben Ayers. We agreed that the plan was to excavate the poor soil in that area and place riprap back in the ditch to make it more solid, eliminate future erosion, and not make a drop off from the sidewalk going back up to the road.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for the petitioner.
Yeah, Commissioner
I
Conley.
might. Yeah, thank you. This would be a good time to. So what about these other issues with the sidewalks that are listed in the report?
I have not been part of that. We perform the as-built, but as far as the communication with the highway department and developer, I have not seen any communication as far as that goes.
So you don't know anything about that? Okay.
Nope.
All right. Thank you.
We will turn now to the Plan Commission. If any members of the Plan Commission have comments or any topics for discussion. Or if there are no topics to discuss, if anybody's willing to make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
In case SPP-24-2, this is a request for modification on the preliminary plat amendment for, it's a request, sorry, for preliminary plat amendment for sidewalk modification. So this would be preliminary plat amendment 2. Petitioner Todd Borgman of Smith Design Group Incorporated. And let's see, the request is for a sidewalk amendment, and the recommended motion, once I get here, is that we approve it. And that is my recommendation, that we approve based on the findings of fact that the proposed preliminary plat meets the subdivision control ordinance and is subject to the highway engineer and MS4 coordinator reports. Thank you.
Second.
Would you be willing to amend that to include the revised letter of?
Oh, yes, yeah. I'm sorry. Totally forgot.
Yes.
I got lost in the wording here. So yes, I would make a revision to that amendment. I would like to revise my motion to include that my motion is based on the revised drawing submitted in the packet that we have before us tonight.
Accepted as a second.
Does that cover it?
The letter of credit is.
And the letter of credit.
Okay. So the motion is on SPP-24-2. Is there also a waiver of final hearing as part of your motion?
Yeah.
Okay. SPP-24-2, a motion to approve the preliminary plat amendment to Muirfield Phase 5. This is a plat amendment 2. It's also a waiver of final hearing and subject to the following condition: that the petitioner update the letter of credit to reflect the revised drawing in the packet with enough funds to cover the remaining sidewalk work, either by an engineer estimate or using NDOT estimates for the latest year. Favorable?
That's what I meant
Okay.
to say.
All right.
I read your mind.
A vote yes is a vote to approve with the stated condition and a waiver of final hearing. Julie?
Yes.
Margaret Clements?
Yes.
Trona and Wright Randolph?
Yes.
Scott Ferris?
Yes.
Jeff Morris?
Yes.
Cheryl Munson? Oh, sorry. Edward Ullman?
Yes.
Dee Owens?
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford?
Yes.
Okay, motion is approved 8-0.
Okay, thank you. And again, I want to thank the petitioner and planning for working together on that to come up with a good solution. So moving on to our next petition is PUO-24-3. This is the Cedar Chase PUD outline amendment preliminary hearing. Ann, I'll turn it over to you.
Good next time.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Friend review committee.
Okay, so the petition site is 0.23 acre property located in section 13 of Van Buren Township. The property is zoned within the Cedar Chase planned unit development and is platted as lot 15 within the Cedar Chase subdivision phase 2 section 2 final plat. So on the screen, the petition site is the highlighted lot 15. So a summary of this request, the request is to reduce a PUD buffer located on the north side from 50 feet to 25 feet. The petition was triggered by zoning enforcement case AC 24-8 for an unpermitted 14 by 17 house addition located within that buffer. The petitioner's intent is to permit the addition after the fact. In order to issue an after the fact permit for the existing housing addition, the PUD would have to be amended to reduce this 50-foot buffer. So the comprehensive plan identifies this area as neighborhood development or N2 zoning district, but goes on to say that existing plan unit developments that were created represent a significant investment into the community, and that all planned developments in effect prior to the creation of the new zoning district and standards should continue to be considered in effect. So the Plan Review Committee heard this petition in August of this year. As you know, the Plan Review Committee reviews the request against the comprehensive plan. They did not forward a recommendation to the Plan Commission, and there was generally a discussion regarding enforcement of the zoning ordinance. So to get into the background of the petition, in 2022, the petitioner had submitted a building permit application for a proposed 14 by 17 addition that was located fully within the PUD buffer, 50 feet. So on screen are two of the materials from that building permit application. On the left was their construction plans explaining that it would be a kind of a sunroom addition. 14 by 17. And on the right was a certified plot plan done by Decker Land Surveying that shows the existing home, the lot boundary, and the proposed sunroom, as well as the 50-foot buffer on the property. You can see that in kind of a bright pink color, and we'll see this a little closer. So, sorry, my mic keeps cutting out. The zoning inspector communicated that the location was considered non-buildable and that they could pursue an outline plan amendment to the PUD. The building permit was put on hold, and the petitioner had received some communication from another planner in the office as well as the zoning inspector, but we did not receive further communication, so the permit's been on hold since 2022. So on the screen is that same certified plot plan, and I've just highlighted the 50-foot buffer. This is a buffer that is applicable to multiple properties within this PUD, and I'll go into that a little bit. So this is the existing one-story dwelling and how the 50-foot buffer is extremely close to the existing structure and is pretty much the majority of the backyard. So in May of 2024, during the review of a non-related permit located on West Red Rock Drive, planning staff discovered that the petitioner had built the addition without that permit. So a complaint was filed, a property complaint was filed, and an enforcement case AC 24-8 was opened. We contacted the petitioner, and the petitioner's representative, Hannah England, personal attorney, has been in contact and working with planning staff towards compliance since then. So on screen is the petitioner's request to reduce the 50-foot buffer to a 25-foot buffer. This would be similar with a rear yard setback, and it would allow the existing sunroom addition to remain in place. So to help us a little bit understand a little bit, on screen are just the two 2022 and 2024 arrows in comparison. And then I'd like to go on and talk a little bit about Cedar Chase PUD. So Cedar Chase PUD was created in 1994 by the city of Bloomington. The 50-foot buffer was created during the creation of that PUD. We had to go back and reference the minutes and a few other documents other than the ordinance. The intent of the 50-foot buffer was to create a natural preservation area for the existing vegetation, buffer against encroachment towards the northern property, and to discourage trespassing from the subdivision onto the northern property. So this 50-foot area, this is the oldest aerial image I have access to is 2005 for the relevant time frame, and the majority of the area has been somewhat vegetated, but not much. And properties today really haven't changed much. So the fact that a 50-foot buffer with the intent to preserve vegetation, the existing vegetation has not changed much. It's already somewhat buffered from the property to the north. The City of Bloomington Environmental Commission did support the 50-foot buffer at that time, stating that it would provide additional green space and help with slowing down and filtering stormwater runoff. So going into a little bit about other properties that are affected by this. So the subdivision is Cedar Chase subdivision Phase 2, Section 2. So there are multiple subdivision plats for this area. This is the petitioner's platted lot is number 15. So on the screen is the plat, and you can see I've highlighted the 50-foot buffer. It's applicable to all of these northern properties. The Cedar Chase PUD in general has a lot of different restrictions, environmental conservancy areas that have a very specific purpose, like karst features. This 50-foot buffer was exclusively for those few reasons that I just listed. Maintain existing vegetation, prevent trespass to the property to the north. So now to compare that to real life, here are the existing properties, 2024 aerial imagery. We can see that, you know, the houses have pretty much been built to conform that, and we can see the addition on lot 15. So on screen is the petitioner's representative letter to the Plan Commission. Did everybody have a chance to read this within the report? I would assume so. Okay. So they outline their request and just kind of go over the fact that, you know, a lot of the property to the north is not being utilized for farming, that it's been used as residential land, and that the majority of the buffer runs through the majority of the property owner's backyard fence and trees. I'd like to pause for one moment because it looks like an exhibit that I would like to review not make it into the packet. So I did a review of the other subdivision plats and all of the setbacks and other limitations on rear yards. I went through 3 phases and I believe 6 plats, just to look at what kind of setbacks do other properties experience in this area. So on screen is Exhibit 7. I reviewed, I believe it was 40 lots. So I looked at 48 lots. So 14 of the 48 lots had a 25-foot rear yard setback, whereas the other 34 lots had a minimum 25-foot setback with an additional special conservancy easement that ranged all the way up to 140, but most commonly was 40 to 60 feet. When you did not have a special conservancy easement on the property or this PUD buffer, the minimum setback is 25 feet. So there are other properties that, you know, have larger rear yards. There are also properties that have 25 feet. It's really a mixture of standards for the rear yard setback. Okay. So if approved, if this request is approved, the PUD buffer would be amended from 50 feet to 25 feet only for lot 15. The petitioner would then be required to file a final plat amendment to address the 50-foot buffer that's platted on the subdivision plat. And they would also be required to submit an after-the-fact residential building permit as well. If this PUO amendment request is denied, the petitioner would be required to remove all of the structure addition that is located within the 50-foot buffer. So staff does recommend forwarding a positive recommendation to the county commissioners for the planned outline plan amendment request subject to the Monroe County Highway Department reports. There was not a waiver final hearing requested, so it will be heard in October as a final hearing for Plan Commission. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I do. I appreciate that you went through all of those plats to look at the rear yard setback. But it appeared that all of the ones on the north side facing that one property were all 50 foot, right? So
Correct.
it depends on where it is in that whole development as to how big the rear yard setback is, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So since there isn't, I feel much better about this. Since there isn't a request for a final hearing, and we're going to hear this again, I wonder if Miss Thetonia, who I know is still online, if she'd be willing to take a look at this because, we heard this in Plan Review Committee. I don't like rewarding bad behavior, right? But you've also been through a lot, so I hear that. But I also don't think it's fair to the neighbors. So my question for Ms. Thetonia will be for October, if she could give us a sense of if all of those setbacks on that whole line in the north were reduced to 25 feet, what would the impact be on stormwater? So that's my question. Tonya, I will send it to her in an email as well, since we're going to be talking about this again. So thank you.
Mr. Enright Randolph.
Yeah, I kind of had that same thought. Also, I'm looking at this, and thanks for linking the outline on the packet, Ms. Curcilius. I didn't find what I was looking at, and I'm not sure if you went over it, but when we were looking at the setbacks, is that only on like a expansion of the home? Because when I'm looking at kind of more generally on Connect Eagle View at the 2024 imagery, I see a lot of porches and accessory dwellings and fences, and were those exempt from the 50-foot buffer, and it's just strictly to the structure of the home itself?
No, there are no exempt structures. Porches that are under 32 inches would not be required to get a building permit, which means planning staff would not review it and inform anybody of any kind of, of the 50-foot buffer. Accessory structures would also have to meet the 50-foot buffer, but again, if they're 120 square feet or less, planning staff has no
Right.
outlet to communicate that buffer. Again, in this specific property had a concrete pad originally where the sunroom addition was. A concrete pad would not be subject to the 50-foot buffer. It would not, it would be an exclusion or not apply.
So I guess it's fair to say that there's a couple other things going on in this buffer that probably should have went through this same process. The one we're focusing on does have kind of a structure improvement or expansion to the home. So I understand how that is easier to see. So thank you. I'm just, again, I think a lot of my thoughts are in line with Commissioner Thomas's and what the impact of the drainage would be there. Thank you.
Ms. Owens, you're next.
Thank you very much. I am very anxious to hear how somebody can apply for a permit to build, be denied the permit, do it anyway, and then come back and ask if it's okay. I'm really anxious to hear that explanation. So if nobody else has a comment, I would love that we go there.
Mr. Ferris.
I'm concerned. There was a lively discussion at the Plan Review Committee with respect to the enforcement not coming forward. And I'm asking a question for the Planning Department. When you sent the letter out on the 1st of August, what is the timing of this petitioner's request? Did it happen after that letter was sent out?
The enforcement letter was sent in May and they did respond promptly, and we did a pre-design at the planning staff's request.
This one says 1 August. Am I looking at something wrong here? Says the planning department is contacting you today due to the Monroe County ordinance violations for this address. Was there one before this?
So I opened the enforcement case in May of 2024.
Okay, and when you did that, tell me what your you're educating me now. What is the process that you went through?
So I simply have my timing mixed up. The enforcement case was opened in May. The letter is dated August 1st. They responded promptly. In order to be on the September Plan Commission means they would have filed in August? No.
What I'm getting at is that did the petitioner's request come in after you took and sent them a letter? And I think the answer is yes, right?
Yes, they did. Also, something is wrong with this letter because my deadline for compliance is June 7th. I mailed this in May. Yeah, this was done in May.
Okay, so would they take and bring this petition forward if they had not been sent a letter?
We hadn't been since the addition had been built. No.
So building upon what the commissioner said here is that we're rewarding bad behavior. And so what is the penalty for folks who do not take and go through the proper procedures? This action taken, was there any legal action taken?
Legal action would only be taken if the petitioner had not responded. The philosophy of the planning staff in cooperation with our legal department is to try to aim for compliance with the zoning ordinance first. Since this is the only route towards compliance, this is the route the property owners chose to
And this is
pursue.
And this is consistent on what you normally do in other cases?
If this was the only option, then yes, we would pursue an outline plan amendment.
All right, thank you.
And can I just clarify the timeline, just so I make sure I have this correct, going back to what Ms. Owen said. So there was a building permit applied for in 2022, correct? And it was denied.
Yes, it was rejected. The information on how to apply for an outline plan amendment was communicated to the property owner at that time.
And then after that,
There was no communication.
the sun porch was built after that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ullman?
Just quick question for Ann, and I don't know if you don't know, have this answer for sure, but the application for the building permit was the same owner or is the same owner as the current petition as well? Ownership has not changed since the 2022 building permit application.
The property owner is Charles Walker. The building permit application was a Haley Walker.
Okay.
Hey, any other questions for Ann? Okay, seeing none, we can turn now to the petitioner or petitioner's representative. So if you'd like to come forward and speak to this, you'll have 15 minutes. You could, I see you're already signing in. If you could state your name for us, please.
Thank you. My name is Hannah England. I'm the representative for Charles Walker. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today. I know there's a lot of questions about how we got here, and I would like to clarify that for everyone. I'm going to give Mr. Walker the chance to come up and kind of, in between my comments, explain the background of the situation. But it is important to note that Mr. Walker was working with a contractor who unfortunately did not verify Monroe County building ordinances or the zoning commission. And that's kind of how we got here. Mr. Walker had employed a contractor to construct this addition. And when he went and had the building permit put on hold or rejected, he then received feedback from this contractor. He relied on the contractor who gave him various reasons why the sunroom was exempt. Those reasons meaning there's an existing concrete pad here. You're not expanding that far beyond that. You're not putting a full block foundation on there. There's airflow, so it's not considered part of the structure. Or your neighbors have very similar things. They've been granted exceptions. When we rely on professionals, we trust them to do what they're supposed to do and to leave you in a position to not have to fix those mistakes. So for a little bit of background, I will turn it over to Mr. Walker, and then I will come back and field questions, and I will give a little bit more detail if he were to miss something or if something needs clarification.
Thank you. And Mr. Walker, if you could sign in on the piece of paper up there, thank you.
Excuse me, I'm kind of new at doing this kind of stuff, but my name is Charles Walker. I am the property owner of 4132 West Red Rock Road. In December of 2014, bought the property to kind of get out of the apartment situation, and get the kids staying in the school systems that they were in. My daughter, Taylor, has extensive medical needs, some of which limit her mobility. There was a significant drop from the back door to the patio. We put a temporary step in, but we knew it wasn't going to be a permanent solution. So we came up with we finally got in a financial situation where we could do something to our house to ease that. And it happened to be an add-on to the house to kind of catch up the drop because our yard sloped just enough that there was a significant drop in the door in the patio. We put in for the building permit in 2022. But when we got the denial letter, I contacted the constructor, which was at the time, it was Sullivan and Sons, and it is now S&S Contracting. They said as long as we aren't building with a concrete or block footer, and there is a gap between the existing concrete pad and where our decking is, we should not have to have a permit. Sorry. So relying on him, I said, okay, let's go ahead and get the project done. In addition to doing this project, he tied the roof for the sunroom into our actual house. So if we have to tear this out, it's going to take out a significant chunk of our house. So I'm hoping, I mean, once again, it's all your guys' decision that we move the 50-foot buffer down to a 25-foot buffer, and I will pay all the fees and the permit back if that's it, if you guys deem that necessary. That's all I got. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Folks, this is Hannah and Glenn again. Tying into what Mr. Walker just said, his daughter does have severe mobility limitations. She has ongoing medical issues that will require ease of access to and from the home. Without this sunroom, as he said, there was a significant drop from their sliding glass door to the backyard ground. They put a small temporary block in, but long-term, that's just not feasible. I know there is a lot of concern about rewarding bad behavior. The thing to keep in mind here is Mr. Walker didn't set out to thumb his nose at the Monroe County Zoning Planning Commission, any of that. He wanted to make his home and his yard more accessible for his daughter, and he hired someone that he thought would be able to do the job and do it well. He picked the wrong contractor, and we're following up on the different options to deal with that problem. But if this addition has to be removed, the house will have to be re-roofed. It will demolish a good chunk of that side outside of just the cost of that, because that's not the issue here. The long-term reality is they will not be able to stay in the home. Their daughter has to have somewhere that's accessible. That was the goal here. So by amending the existing PUD buffer, we are still keeping with the spirit and intent of that buffer because the vegetation is not changing. There is nothing that is encroaching upon or interfering with the northward neighbor. We're just asking that the existing buffer be reduced to allow them to keep the sunroom, to allow them to keep the ease of access to their backyard. And in applying for the permit in the beginning, Mr. Walker did demonstrate that he was willing to pay for the upfront costs. He was willing to seek that option, and he is still willing to do that. And we completely understand that that is part and parcel for moving forward with this process. Had he known that his contractor was incorrect in his belief, he would have just done this to begin with. And part of the punishment for unduly relying on somebody is he's here. He has gone through this process. He's paid the fees to go through this process, and he is coming before you today to explain what happened and ask you to approve the plan that would allow him to keep the change to his home, keep his home accessible while maintaining the integrity of the property and the spirit of the subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members of the Plan Commission have questions for the petitioner or the petitioner's representative? Yeah, Mr. Ferris.
I just want to say thank you very much for that explanation.
Any other questions or comments?
Question I'd like to direct to staff if that's agreeable with you. And if you could, if this was, and I know it's in a PUD, so it's different, but if this lot itself was not in a PUD, would you be willing to assume what zone or what zone it would be in currently? If it was not in a PUD, what is the zone type for that particular lot? And then therefore, what would be the setback requirements for a lot of that size throughout the rest of the county?
So 0.23 acres. And you're asking me to find a setback that I don't use regularly, so I'm gonna need a moment.
That's okay. I know I'm putting you on the spot and I apologize for that.
Nope.
I know that rear setbacks are not the most commonly discussed numbers.
Well, it would be probably either medium density residential or high density residential. So right close. So let's see. Medium density residential has a minimum lot size of 0.21 and it has a rear yard of 10 feet.
And what is high density? Just out of curiosity.
High density residential would also have a 10-foot rear yard setback.
So the 50, I know you already explained this in your presentation about the reasons from your research about why the 50-foot, but the 50-foot was very much set by the PUD for the PUD, not in any way conforming to some other structured numbers that were put out forth and other densities.
That's correct. It was City of Bloomington zoning at that time, not related to those, simply as a measure of buffering with vegetation.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ann. I apologize for putting you on the spot.
No.
Okay, Mr. Enright Randolph, you're next.
Yes, mine's questions in the same lane as Edwin's. Not just the size of the parcel, but where do we see 50-foot setbacks currently in any of our zones or greater? You don't have to go through the whole list. I'm just trying to, I guess, paint a picture here of how many zones require a 50-foot rear yard setback.
The agricultural rural reserve, forest reserve, or conservation residential, no, only Ag RR and FR have a 50-foot setback when it's an agricultural or commercial use, not when it's a residential use, or when it's a mineral extraction or recreation zoning district.
So I guess in sense, it's kind of a larger operation and not typically a single lot family dwelling kind of parcel. So thank you. Also, I was looking through the packet and I couldn't find it. Would you please put the slide back up of why this 50-foot buffer was intended? Some of them seem kind of interesting. I think you said something about concerns of trespassing or people lingering to the north. And I guess my main point here is this was a PUD done in 2001. And again, it goes back to my more major concern of what kind of impacts by allowing more development occur or removing that buffer, not just for this lot, but for that whole strip, and what stormwater would think about that.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to
Yeah,
do
do
a
that.
snapshot real quick of this. If you just leave that up there for a second longer. Thank you.
So
Got it.
the PUD was created in 1994. It was platted in the early 2000s. This vegetative buffer has basically never been vegetated on this site. So the vegetation that we see on this property and on the rest of the northern properties platted within the same phase, the vegetation is very similar and it's pretty much off-site or adjacent. So the home addition under this in question here did not affect any type of vegetation. The original reasons for the 50-foot buffer done in 1994 was to create a natural preservation area for existing vegetation, buffer against encroachment towards the northern property, and discourage trespassing from the subdivision onto the northern property.
Appreciate that.
Does anybody commission have questions? Yeah, Commissioner Thomas.
Mr. Enright Randolph, I've asked Ms. Thetonia to look into this already, about any repercussions, stormwater wise. And, my thought is that instead of changing one, lot, that we could potentially adjust the setback on that row of lots on the north end of that subdivision if it's not going to be a problem. But that is, instead of just giving a gift to one person, if it isn't going to have an impact, we could change, and it's not going to affect them unless they decide to add on or build. We could change that setback for that whole line of residences on the north side. And reduce it. So that's my thinking on it. And I've already sent Ms. Thetonia an email about this, so she will have hopefully an answer for us in October. But that's, we always have to go back, even if it's been 30 years, we have to go back and say, why was this done? And there was stormwater involved in that. And, maybe that's not an issue now. Maybe it's worse. I don't know. And that's why I've asked Kelsey to look at it. So thank you.
And I agree with that, Commissioner Thomas.
Mr. Oman.
I just want to say thank you to Commissioner Thomas for doing the work of getting Kelsey involved with this. So.
Okay, we can turn now to public comment. If there's anybody here in the room that wishes to speak in favor of this petition, please come to the podium, or if you're online, please raise your virtual hand. Seeing nobody, if there's anybody here in the room or online that wishes to speak against this petition, please come to the podium or raise your virtual hand. Seeing nobody, we'll close public comment and come back to the Plan Commission. So keeping in mind that this will move ahead to the October meeting, are there any other comments, or do we want to end the discussion tonight?
I have none, except that I think that what Commissioner Thomas said was suggested and is looking into would be the optimum, most fair solution.
I agree with that as well.
I think
Yeah, Mr. Ullman.
I'll have to apologize that I'm not the most up to date on what the different permits and petitions and fees are, but my only concern would be if there is a change made for all the lots, what that looks like in terms of fees and what fees there might be burdened by our current petitioner as opposed to everybody else that's also going to be getting a benefit of this, if there are any that others are benefiting from the current petitioner's fees being paid. So I don't know if that is understood. So
I get it. He could be very popular with his neighbors.
Yeah.
And I get your point, but I would assume that all of the things that he's having to deal with now monetarily, and stress wise, I'm sorry about your daughter, but I'm glad she's in great hands. Hopefully that construction company has good insurance. And I know that you have counsel, and I think it could benefit the whole neighborhood if it works out. So.
Okay, we will see you back again in October. So thank you for coming out tonight and speaking. Okay, moving on to Case REZ 24-7, as was mentioned earlier, is continued. That's the Sunset Hill Historic Preservation Overlay, so we will not be covering that case tonight. So moving on to the last petition of the evening, SSS 24-2, the Lampkins Ridge Sliding Scale Subdivision Preliminary Hearing. This has a waiver of final hearing requested and a buildable area waiver requested. So Drew, I will turn it over to you once you finish handing out pamphlets.
Thank you, Drew.
Okay, so I just handed out a letter. The first page is a letter of support from Mr. Terry Quillman for this upcoming petition. And then the second item that you have is a packet. It's an email response that was submitted to staff earlier this afternoon. So it did not make it into the packet. And it is not on my presentation either because of the time that it came in. So I wanted to distribute that to you all as part of the record. Okay. One moment while I share my screen. Okay, there we go. So this is SSS-24-2, the Lampkins Ridge Sliding Scale Subdivision. It's a 4-lot sliding scale subdivision preliminary plat. And it's located at 6305 East Lampkins Ridge Road. It's in Salt Creek Township, sections 5 and 8. It is unplatted, and its acreage is 51.43 acres. There is a waiver requirement. That's why it's before you this evening. It's the 1 acre buildable area waiver per Chapter 862-4A6. And I'll explain that one further along in the presentation. The current zoning is forest reserve. It's in the eco overlay, the environmental constraints overlay. It's in area 3. It's the comprehensive plan is designated as farm and forest, and the use is residential. Petitioner is proposing a 4-lot sliding scale subdivision with 1 waiver request. All proposed lots will receive access from East Lampkins Ridge Road. Proposed lot 1 is an existing lot that has an existing single-family residence located on it. It also has an existing driveway cut. Lots 2, 3, and 4 will require new driveway entrances off of East Lampkins Ridge Road and have applied for the appropriate right-of-way activity permits off of East Lampkins Ridge Road. There is an existing driveway entrance, a pre-existing driveway entrance off of South Cooper Road that would provide access to Lot 4. However, the Highway Department requires, that driveway entrance be removed so that all of the lots in the subdivision are acquiring access via East Lampkins Ridge Road. All right, so the waiver request this evening is a buildable area waiver, and it's for proposed Lot 1. When you look at the proposed preliminary plat, you'll note that East Lampkins Ridge Road actually cuts through the property, bisecting it. Proposed Lot 1 will be the portion of the property that exists north of East Lampkins Ridge Road, or on the north side of the road. That area is where that existing single-family residence is, along with an already existing driveway. However, the buildable area calculation of that lot is under 1 acre. So within Chapter 862, which dictates the provisions for the sliding scale method, it does require that a lot that's created through this method of subdivision have at least 1 acre of buildable area. It does provide language in the ordinance that does allow for a waiver of this provision if there is a pre-existing residential structure on the lot. So because of that pre-existing structure on this proposed Lot 1, they are eligible for this waiver, and that is why it is here before you this evening. Here's the location map and the site conditions map as well. There's plenty of buildable area that's under 15 and under 12% even on the north portions of the property that's just south of East Lambkins Ridge Road. You can already see the slope constraints that are existing in the proposed Lot 1 area, which is the portion of the property that is north of East Lambkins Ridge Road. Here we have a table summary of the lot configuration. This is also included in the packet. So Lot 1 will have 4.706 acres. Lot 3 will have 3.172 acres. Lot 3, 4.032 acres. And finally, Lot 4, which is the parent parcel remainder, 37.902 acres. And that is the parent parcel that is subject to the 25-year subdivision moratorium currently provided through the sliding scale subdivision process. New septic permits have been issued for each of the proposed lots, aside from lot number 1, where a septic permit was installed because there's an existing house there. Utility access, there are capacity letters provided in this report. It's in the packet. Water from East Monroe Water Corporation, that's in Exhibit 4, and electric utilities from Duke Energy is also in Exhibit 4. I've already stated about the property access coming off of East Lambkins Ridge Road, which does require a right-of-way dedication of 25 feet because it is a local road. Environmental conditions, the whole property is within Area 3 of the environmental constraints overlay, so slopes greater than 18% are protected from any land disturbance activity. And then, of course, the proposed lots 2, 3, and 4 are all currently vacant, and Lot 1 that has that existing single-family residence, it's approximately 600 square feet. Highway Department provided comments. Paul Satterley, the highway engineer, provided information about Lot 4 and correcting the dedicated right-of-way along East Lambkins Ridge Road. That was corrected on the plat by the petitioner's surveyor. Ben Ayers talks about the right-of-way activity permit applications, and within those permit applications, the note about removal of the existing driveway cut off of South Cooper Road, which travels south along the eastern side of the property, is found. That comment is found there in those permit applications. On the screen now is the most up-to-date preliminary plat. You'll also note that drainage easements are also located on this document. That was per the requirements of the MS4 coordinator. And so now on the screen is just a zoomed in portion of the northern sections of this subdivision, just to have a better view of the resolution. You will note that there is an access easement that cuts through lots 3 and 2 that does connect back into lot 4. There's some buildable area back in that lower southwestern corner of lot 4. And I believe, and the petitioner can speak to this more so, is I believe that's an old logging road. And I think they're just wanting to maintain that so that they may be able to, go back there for recreation purposes if needed or wanted, because there is a sizable buildable area back there. This was heard by the Plat Committee. And the Plat Committee's only condition of approval was to provide the location of septic systems. And otherwise voted 3-0 to forward this with a positive recommendation. You'll see on the plat on the screen now, those septic locations are delineated. So you'll see here on lot 4, the septic system, proposed septic system is here in the middle of the property. And then lots 3 and 2 also towards the back and middle of the property as well. So that's a good idea of the location of the residences that will be placed on the property, because those are the approved septic systems per the permits issued by the health department. On the screen now is just a section of the southern portions of the property. You can see that buildable area that I was alluding to that can be accessed through that easement through lots 2 and 3. Okay, and then on the screen now is the zoom in of lot number 1 that shows the buildable area that's available to lot 1, which is only 0.88 acres, hence the waiver requirement. Now, if this property had just already 1 acre of buildable here, you would not be hearing it this evening at the Plan Commission level. It would have just been a Plat Committee decision. So it's because of the waiver that it's before you this evening. Here's some aerial pictometry of the property. I will take this time to note that the property does exhibit portions of DNR classified forest. That is a state program that the planning department does not enforce. It is a program that does restrict some uses on the property. However, a property owner may elect to remove themselves or portions of their property from that program. They just have to go through a process with the DNR, and I believe they do have to pay back taxes on some of that land because it is a tax credit, I believe, for including property that you own in the classified forest program. Here's some site photos. This is along East Lambkins Ridge Road. On the bottom right photograph, you can see that existing driveway entrance for Lot 1. These two photographs are of that existing driveway entrance on Lot 1. And then this is traveling east on East Lambkins Ridge Road. So the property in question is on the right side of the screen or south. Continuing east on East Lambkins Ridge Road. And as you continue east, you come across a few other neighboring properties that you'll see their driveways start to begin, all the way until you reach the intersection with South Cooper Road, which is a gravel road that continues along the eastern portion of the property as you go south. On the screen, I included a handout that we typically provide property owners that are in the classified forest program. So I just wanted to include that in the presentation. We also have the capacity letters. This is all included in the packet. The petitioner's findings of fact for their waiver request is also included in the packet, stating their rationale to allow the waiver of 1 acre buildable area. And finally, the petitioner did submit some conceptual drawings of what the house structure or structures may look like. I'm not sure which lot this one will be on, but this is a conceptual design that they submitted to staff to be presented at this meeting, as well as this diagram here that shows the east and west elevations of the property, or excuse me, of the structure. We did have a letter of support, so I was able to include that in the presentation. And that is from Terry Quillman. He does state in this letter that he does mention the support of other neighbors along South Cooper Road with respect to concerns that may have come up about this petition. Included that in this as well. Okay. And then you all have the handout, the physical handout of the additional letter of concern that was submitted by a Josie. I don't know if I can pronounce her last name, but I don't believe she is here this evening. She might be attending online, but she did want to submit this packet of information to you based on her own concerns and possibly shared concerns of other neighbors on East Lambkins Ridge Road. So that brings me to staff's recommendation for SSS 24-2. And the staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat based on the finding that the proposed preliminary plat meets the subdivision control ordinance subject to the highway engineer and MS4 coordinator reports with the following condition. The petitioner includes the approved septic locations for each proposed lot on the preliminary plat that has since been completed by the surveyor. And we also recommend approval of the 1 acre buildable area waiver request per chapter 862-4A6 based on the findings of fact. All right, I'll take any questions.
On lot 1, will that existing structure be changed, or will there be a different structure, or is it just coming into conformance?
I am not privy to any information that the structure will be changing. The permit that was issued for that structure, I believe, was in 2021. Yes. So I would be surprised if they did want to change that structure already, but that would be a good question for the petitioner.
Okay, thank you.
Do any other members of the Plan Commission have questions for Drew? Okay, seeing none, we can turn to the petitioner now. If you'd like to come forward, sign and state your name. You'll have 15 minutes.
Before he begins, can I ask just one quick? I was reviewing the packet. On that lot 1, my assumption is there is no way the lot lines could have been adjusted to yield a full buildable acre on lot 1. by moving the line between 1 and 2. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, the only way that lot one appears to have been able to acquire enough acreage to have 1 full acre of buildable area would have been to extend lot one across East Lambkins Ridge Road south, which was against the initial ideas of the subdivision, which was to create its own lot on the portion of land that's north of East Lambkins Ridge.
All right, and I was under the impression that this is not only the roadway, but also just to work within the confines of the existing topography of the ground as it sits, sort of taking advantage of what's there. Would that be an accurate assessment?
There is already a house there, so they did already utilize that buildable area space there. So I think that answers your question.
Right. Well, I didn't see the house depicted on there. Sorry.
Yes, it's not depicted on the preliminary plat, but there is a building permit, and there is a house existing on lot one already. That's
Okay.
one of
All
the preliminary requirements in order for it to be eligible for this waiver in the first place.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. And I think before you get started, I think Commissioner Thomas had a question. Sorry.
I do. Sorry, I have a question for staff. Do you know why there is a decision to install different driveways on the other side of Lambkins Ridge instead of a shared driveway or some kind of, because you have somebody from the community who's asked that question, and so I wanted to be their voice for a moment.
I don't believe I can speak to the idea of a shared driveway concept versus each individual lot having its own driveway entrance. That would most likely be a good question for the highway engineers.
Right. I just don't see anyone online from highways, so that's why I was asking if you knew anything. Okay, thank you.
Okay, you can go ahead. You'll have 15 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I know everybody's on overtime this week, and I appreciate you staying late, and I hope you're being compensated well. And like I said, I'll try to be brief. As I mentioned Tuesday night, and will raise 4 children here in Monroe County. And this lot, or this parcel, is where I intend to do that. As already mentioned, there's an ADU, a small building, 600 square feet, on the northern side of the road. And that was my attempt to do something useful with the land. And since it was installed 2.5, 3 years ago, there's a very nice lady that's lived there with a reasonable amount of rent. And she gets to enjoy breathtaking views. But I'm here tonight because I understand because I put that ADU there, I have to get this exception in order for us to build our home on the south side. We need to subdivide the property and we need that waiver, please. I'd like to make sure you know that I've worked with some of my neighbors. There's a 100-foot conservation easement on the southeast side, and that was at the request of my neighbors and was happy to do that. On the layout itself on the south side, as you all know, once we do this subdivision, we cannot do anything else again for 25 years. So that is my best guess at what the future might look like for my family. Only thing planned at this moment is for us to build our home on lot 4, which is the parent parcel. Lot 3, conceptually, I would like to sell to my brother and sister-in-law. They have 3 children, and they've been visiting us often from Texas, and they've fallen in love with Bloomington, and there's a good chance in the future they'd like to raise their families here as well. That's the best I understand for the future. Lot 2, I have no purpose for at all at this moment, and don't foresee it, unless potentially my children would like to build there in the future. That's all I have for you. As always, I'm very welcome or open to any feedback you might have and willing to work with anyone, including my neighbors or yourselves. Mrs. Clements, on your question on lot 1, I do not intend to do anything different on that lot other than keep it as it is. Maybe help the tenant. She mentioned she might want a garden there, so I might help her make a garden there.
For answering that.
Certainly. And if you need pictures of it, if that's important, I might be able to find some right now, or you could get them off Elevate on the tax records. Thank you again for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the petitioner? Or sorry, there's 12 minutes left. Were you wanting to speak? Okay. You can have the remaining 12 minutes.
Hello, I'm Todd Borgman, Smith Design Group still. I just wanted to comment on two things. As far as the waiver, the waiver exception is in there for this exact reason. When you have an existing house and for uncontrollable reasons, you cannot get a buildable acre. Like in this case, if they weren't subdividing it, they took the roadway dedication and the setback. If you add those back in, there is more than an acre buildable. But this is exactly why this waiver exception is in there when it comes to a subdivision. And then as far as the driveways, when it comes to a subdivision, when you apply for driveways for a subdivision, you apply for each lot, and it's up to the highway's own discretion to determine where those driveways go. We typically do not look at shared driveways unless we cannot find one on each lot. And in this case, we were able to determine there's 4 separate driveway locations for each lot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the Plan Commission for the
I have a
petitioner?
question for the petitioner.
Yeah, so if you could come back up. to the
Sorry, I have a
microphone.
quick question. Given the fact that this would be an exception to our buildable area and there's already a house, small house sort of there, would you be willing to commit to retaining and not expanding the current footprint? In other words, if something happened to the house, you could build the same footprint. But the concern is from some neighbors, and when I think about an exception to the 1 acre buildable requirement, if there's already a house there, so would you be willing to agree to that condition?
Absolutely. No
Great.
problem.
Okay, can we make that part of the record? Ms. Nestor-Jelen? I think we'd have to get Dave to write something up, but
Yeah, I think Dave is currently commuting, but I
Yeah.
can call him and see if.
yeah,
able to-
I don't know how we can get that done, but I
Okay.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, if Commissioner Thomas, if that has to get done in the future, I'm happy to agree to it at any point in time.
Okay, are there any other questions? Ma'am, are you wanting to speak on behalf of the petitioner or as a public commenter? If you'd like to speak on behalf of the petitioner, you can go ahead. Otherwise, we'll take public comment here in just a minute. Okay, thank you. Are there any other members, any questions for members of the Plan Commission for the petitioner? Okay, so now we will take public comment. Sorry, I didn't realize we were that close to the public comment portion. If you could sign in, state your name, you'll have 3 minutes. And if there's anybody online who wishes to speak for or against this petition, go ahead and raise your virtual hand.
My name is Mary Ann Killian Gilbert, and I have the property at the corner of Lambkins Ridge and Cooper Road. And I want to speak on behalf of actually the neighbors that from down Cooper Road who were in support of this, but also with a number of us that use Lambkins Ridge or see the traffic on Lambkins Ridge. So we're trying to figure out a way to support the proposal, but actually make it more environmentally friendly and address some safety concerns that we have about Lambkins Ridge Road and the habitat. And so the shared driveway proposition, I think, might be a solution that would, or a compromise that could work for both sides of the fence in some way. And the existing, when I first looked at the petition, and it's been changed a number of times to correct some errors or additions, but that the picture of the large house, what looks like a large house, is marked for lot 1. And on the picture, which I think is a mistake, because the house there is very, very small. It's a I don't even know how many, I mean, I haven't been there. I walk that road all the time, drive that road all the time. And I've had an accident on the road as well. So it's not a safe road, and the pictures are misleading, I think, at least the ones that were in the proposal. So that, I think, deserves further study and concern. The there is further down the road a subdivision that has a shared driveway. And I don't know all the rules and concerns of that, but this, especially with the existing logging road that kind of went through the property. And we live through that logging procedure. It's just right across from where I live. And I understand why the highway blocked that access road. So they went through, it is a forest reserve, so there's lots of considerations about that. And they did timber the place. And we never even, actually, they did timber the place. So there are ways in which that existing road could be, if connected with Lambkins Ridge in some way, could provide, I think, an access that would allow environmental concerns, and the certain parts of the road have a huge bank up to the level property. And so that interferes with some of the driveways, I think, that are proposed. I haven't done that study myself, and I came here more in terms of the environmental impact of the traffic on the road. And it does say that on the plat that, or the commissioner, that the driveway permit approval is pending the outcome of this subdivision petition, which I think is kind of maybe backwards. In other words, there should be a way to look at the situation and figure out a driveway approval or a highway approval that would help all of these concerns, rather than just starting with the proposal the way it is. So in that sense, I would sort of add to what my neighbor, Terry Quillman, has said, in that the neighbors do support the proposal, but I think at least for the people that live on Lambkins Ridge and see the kind of traffic and the visual aspects of the road, especially the lot one is at the top of a hill. So there needs to be more signage or something there that will tell people, because when it's dark, there's no lights on the road. It's a hazard. But I think there is a solution, and that there's a way to address both of these kinds of concerns.
Thank you for coming out and sharing your concerns tonight. We appreciate it. Is there anyone else that would like to speak either in favor or against this petition? Please raise your virtual hand. Not, we will turn back to Mr. Atkins. You'll have 5 minutes if there's anything else you'd like to say in response to the remonstrance that you've heard tonight.
I think that was a support, but I agree with Marianne that it is a twisty and windy road. I've thought about that, and so has my wife. Having 4 kids, we don't want them getting too far out on that road and somebody coming around a blind corner. And that's why we actually put the residents so far back. I do agree that it could use signs, and it'd be great if there was a way to make the road safer. Don't know how I can personally do that, but I would recommend the county take a look at it. The one comment on on the driveways, and Todd, jump in, please, because he worked it. But as I understand it, there was several rounds of review with County Highway to get the driveways where they are. One of the conditions was that we would abandon that logging entrance off Cooper Road. No problem with that at all. And in fact, the neighbors support that as well. They would prefer not, because that'll kick out less gravel onto Lambkins Ridge. So no problem with that. The way it's drawn up is, again, what we have alignment from with County Highway. That's what I'd like to leave, because it's taken us 14 months to get to this point, and we'd like to get going on this house for the family. But if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you.
Is that right, Todd? Correct. Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any remaining questions for the petitioner? Okay, looks like we're good. Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
I left a voicemail with Mr. Schilling. I just want to make sure he's commuting, so I don't want him to drive unsafely. But I just want to make sure I can convey it correctly. So you would like the petitioner to commit in some fashion to not expanding the dwelling, but are you also?
The footprint, the current footprint of the
current
dwelling
footprint of
will
the
not
home.
be expanded in the future on lot one.
Okay, but is that also excluding the further development of anything on that lot or just to the expansion of that home?
Well, there should only be one residence on the lot, right?
Correct, but accessory structures or,
Except I'm not worried about that.
Okay.
It's just, yeah, maybe it's affordable. But, yeah, if that's possible, that would be great.
Okay, Mr. Enright Randolph, you have a question?
Yes, I guess the first question would be to planning. Was there a request to waive the second hearing on this?
Yes, there is a waiver requested for the final hearing.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I guess I just wanted to kind of bring up that outside, Drew, would you bring up the zoomed in waiver request? You have one that's highlighted. Yeah, there. So outside of the 0.88 acres, which they need 1 acre of buildable lot, this would be a by right subdivision, sliding scale. And it wouldn't come to the plan commission. I'm a little hesitant to support any more strenuous measures put on this outside of addressing just the waiver. If that lot is ever sold in the future, I think the restraints that the lot itself has would kind of really be adequate. That's kind of my thoughts on this. And, you know, I'm kind of curious of what my colleagues think on this, because I was here to kind of support this today and move forward. The shared driveway, now that's an interesting question, but again, this would have been a by right development without that waiver. I would be curious if the petitioner has any thoughts on kind of the shared driveway versus kind of putting any commitments in on what the current structure is on the house. But actually, never mind. My real thing is I don't think we need to overburden this. I understand that they're asking for a waiver, but some of that waiver is due to dedication and other things. So there's a huge practical difficulty. I am absolutely concerned about safety. If the petitioner wanted to offer that up versus us asking for them, you know, that would be great. If we need to move this to a second hearing, that's awesome. I would absolutely not want to support anything that we're asking a petitioner to commit kind of on the whim that might dictate the way that this property can be developed in the future, as significant as the actual structure itself. So thank you.
Yeah, we'll go to Commissioner Thomas next.
Yeah, it's not a whim. It's actually something that the petitioner agreed to when I asked. So, yeah, I thought it was a good suggestion, given
I
that.
meant writing the
Can you explain the
technical
advantage of that?
language.
Because there is limited buildable acreage and we're providing a waiver on that. And the
Right.
house already exists, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's subtracting out, there's 38,333 square feet of buildable acreage there. According to Elevate, the house is there is 525 square feet. Leaves 37,808 square feet of undeveloped use of the land out of 8/10 of an acre. So if they wanted a 1,000 square foot home, it's only going to take another 500 square feet out of the 37,000 square feet that are there. I don't see how that does anything but limit the petitioner. And I mean, bless him, he said he's willing to do it, but it just caps the value that house can ever have. A 525 square home is tiny. And if there's 88% of an acre there, why limit it to a tiny little house? I don't understand the advantage. What is the advantage? It does keep the property value down because the house can't be worth very much.
If somebody puts a house on property and then says, oh yeah, and by the way, I'm going to do a sliding scale. And this side is on one side of the road and it is not a lot that can be made any bigger. And you've created a house.
So why would you be stuck in that house forever? Why would you ask somebody to stay in that size of house forever?
But if they came in and asked to build a different house, it wouldn't be permitted because there's not enough buildable acreage. It's like a one acre buildable area is required in order to build a house there.
And I don't want to ask him to remove the house. So, and I don't know how many ways I can explain it, but I've explained it.
Well, there's no practical sense in constraining somebody on the amount of square footage they can have on a house just because it's part of a sliding scale subdivision. It's a non sequitur.
Are there any other comments? Yeah, Mr. Ullman.
I have a question for staff, if I may. If someone were to purchase a 4.7 acre lot that only had a buildable acreage of 0.88, that did not have an existing home on it, that they wanted to build on it, they could apply for a waiver to build on said lot, correct?
They could, if they were in the environmental constraints overlay area, they could apply for a variance to the Board of Zoning Appeals because the eco area does require a certain acreage of buildable area in order to be receive permits to
So
build.
they could apply for variance when if or when a variance is allowed. Is there a constraint put on how many square foot a structure can be? Or do they have to provide building permits with that, or what?
Yes, so if it's a brand new construction, meaning a new foundation, they would be required to submit a certified plot plan. But if they were granted the variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals, it's up to the board to place any additional conditions of approval on the size or the construction of that structure based on the conditions of the site.
Also mention if the site is vacant, which the site was in 2021, we have an exception that the administrator can grant for the development of a single family home if there's no way that the lot can achieve the standards in the eco area. So in this case, if they were locating the home completely within the buildable area, which was less than the percent slope, I think it's 18% slope, but they can't achieve the minimum 1 acre contiguous because the parcel is constrained by its own size, we're able to issue an exception without going to the Board of Zoning Appeals. If they were to want to build their footprint outside of the 18%, that's usually when the Board of Zoning Appeals can come in and they would have to apply for variance, and we can start talking about house sizes to move it outside of the non-buildable area. But we typically don't have that discussion at the BZA unless we're talking about an encroachment into slope as well as other things.
Okay, so just for my clarification, if lot 1, as we see on the screen right there, existed independently from a sliding scale subdivision without a structure on it, and I wanted to build a house within the 0.88, you could give me permission, staff in-house, to build a house there,
A single family residence.
a single family residence.
If it was located fully within the buildable.
Okay, thank you.
Also, just to clarify too, petitioner will have to bring in a site plan for site plan approval. So the concerns about the shared driveway and all that can be addressed at that point in the process, correct?
So driveways, the location of driveways are approved by the highway department through the right-of-way activity permit process.
But I mean, that can be addressed farther down the road.
I believe that the plat that you see on the screen, as well as in the packet, does show the locations of those approved driveways. So if those driveways those locations were to be amended, I'm not sure what that process would look like. It would likely have to go through the highway department. Possibly I don't know if a plat amendment would be required to readjust driveway locations, however.
I think that the highway department is usually amenable to shared driveways if it's what the
Right,
petitioner is requesting or site distance isn't met. But if site distance is met and they would like their own driveway, then I think it's,
Right. I just don't see that as a stumbling block for moving this forward tonight with a waiver of final hearing. I just wanted to be sure that I wasn't hamstringing anybody by doing that.
Okay, Mr. Enright Randolph.
Yeah, mine's kind of a procedural question. This is a plan commission decision. I also think, I guess I'll wait for an answer. I just want everyone to be aware of how the process of this goes.
Did you
I
ask a
guess-
question?
Yeah, this decision here is a plan commission decision. This doesn't go forward, so we are the body that makes the final determination, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I would be curious, based off this discussion, of truly if there is any hardship put on the petitioner for committing to not change the foundational structure on here versus wanting to get this approved and move forward. I understand that they're asking for a waiver. It turns this into a negotiation, discussion, conversation, looking at the best use of the property. But, at some times I feel like that puts pressure for people to make commitments because they want to see this go through. So I was going to ask the petitioner of if he has any concerns at all, but I also will state that I'm not going to support anything that's going to limit this petition any further. But that's a question if the petitioner would like to answer.
If you'd like to come forward, thank you.
First, I'd like to say I very much appreciate the question. For better or for worse, this process has taken 14 months and over $10,000 to get me here. And we're in a house right now that is a very modest house and probably too small from us. And my wife bugs me every day about when we're going to get this going. And I'll bend over backwards as much as I can to make my wife happy. And if that's what it takes to get this deal done, is to limit an incredible amount of value in the future, so be it. I would prefer not to, but if that's the condition to get this going and to make my wife happier, I'll do that. But again, I would prefer not to. It does limit the future of that parcel in many ways. Some maybe even which I didn't envision until this discussion tonight.
Thank you so much for addressing that question. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. And Jackie, did you have an update for Mr. Schilling?
yes, so it would be a reasonable request to ask for a written commitment if the petitioner agrees to it, to not expand the single family structure on the site. And I would just ask that we be a little bit specific in that time period, or if in perpetuity until if it's demolished, could a new structure go back? Things like that.
Thank you. Any other further discussion amongst the Plan Commission? Or if not, is anybody willing to make a motion?
I'm prepared to make a motion. In case SSS-24-2, this is the Lampkins Ridge sliding scale subdivision, a 4-lot sliding scale subdivision with a preliminary plat. I recommend approval of this preliminary plat based on the findings that the proposed preliminary plat meets the subdivision control ordinance, subject to the highway engineer and MS4 coordinator reports, with the following condition: that the petitioner includes the approved septic locations for each proposed lot on the preliminary plat. And I would add to my motion a request for waiver of final hearing be approved. That is my motion.
I would like to offer a friendly amendment. Also approval of the 1 acre buildable area waiver request per chapter 862-4A6 based on finding of facts. And I will say that first condition Drew alluded to has already been achieved.
Right. So, and then I would include in my motion a waiver of the 1 acre lot requirement for the lot 1 depicted on the drawing.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve SSS-24-2, which is the Lampkins Ridge sliding scale subdivision. This includes a waiver of the final hearing as well as a waiver of the buildable area requested, with the condition that the petitioner includes the approved septic locations for each lot on the preliminary plat. A vote yes is a vote to approve with the one condition stated as well as the waivers. Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Randolph,
Yes.
Scott Ferris,
Yes.
Jeff Morris,
Yes.
Cheryl Munson. Oh, sorry. Edward Ullman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
No.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Julie Thomas.
No.
Okay, the motion is approved 6-2.
Thank you for your patience in being the last item on the agenda tonight. We appreciate it. So if there's anything else that anybody wishes to speak about that's not on the agenda, please come forward or raise your virtual hand. See any reports for us tonight?
No, I do not.
Okay, Mr. Schilling has left. So do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Good evening.
Thank you.